It's the Lekker Rugby Inside Story series.
Welcome to the Lekker Rugby Inside Story, where we talk to rugby journalists from across the world. And this week we're having a chat to Angus Opperman, our friend from Rugby 365, who's got his ear on the ground regards to everything that happens in the Stormers camp. And I thought it a good idea to speak to him about the rumours surrounding Damian Willemse and Manie Libbok maybe going on a sabbatical. But before we get to that, please help us to get to 20,000 subscribers by the end of June. So remember to press that subscribe button and become part of this growing Megafoon rugby community.
Yeah, thank you, Ambia. How's it? Look, I think I know what I talk about. Sometimes I'm not always sure about it, but interesting times, eh? Damian Willemse's rumors, him going to Leinster. The thing is, we spoke about it, me and my boss, Jan de Koning, also a good mate of yours. And the guy that reports it, Neil Frisno, I think is his name. I'm not sure. He works for Rugby Pass. He always has these inside scoops on players being touted for a certain team. I even saw something this morning as well, but I'm not sure what I saw. But I saw his name and I was just laughing at it. So there was talks about Sasha before, talks about Damian, talks about other players as well. And every time Jan asked Dobson, he would say, no substance, no substance, no substance. And again, we saw it. So I think it's really, if you want to call it fake news, just speculation. I want to watch my words, obviously, in a public platform. But I think it's more speculation than anything else. And it's basically clickbait, to get people riled up. And then obviously, as a journalist, we have to investigate this and ask questions. So it's all one of those things where people will put out, like they would say, they would throw a story in the bush and see what comes out, but there's no substance to it. So, the Stormers, they actually ended up releasing a statement saying that it's not going anywhere. And I think it's because there's been so many questions to their media team and their guys to ask, like, what is the truth now? We hear this, we hear that. Is there any sort of truth towards this? And they had to come out and say, listen, he's under contract till 2027. He's not going anywhere. And unfortunately, not unfortunately, but the thing is, he's not the first player to be targeted of the Stormers. He's been probably like the third, fourth guy now that someone makes up a report which questions their journalism, to be fair. And then people have to extinguish fires left, right, and center.
We all know Damian is in the contract from 2022 to 2027, one of the biggest contracts signed so far. And we all know he's being paid various means to get around to salary cap a little bit. I'm not going to expand on that too much. He's not going anywhere, but the question is more towards whether Leinster can afford him, which they can. We know they've had Jordie Barrett there. There's been a huge success, and they're looking for someone to replace him. He's going back after the end of the season, going back to New Zealand. It was part of his contract renewal that he would be allowed to come play in Leinster. My question to you is, forget about everything else. Would Damian Willemse fit into Leinster's style of play, on merit?
I would say no merit, but I do think he will fit into the team. I think he's got that ability to basically adapt to what's needed. He's much more matured now than 3-4 years ago. I'm not sure if you guys remember, but Damian in, say, 2021, 2022, well, say 2021 and prior, he used to be very loose and uncanny and want to do his own thing. He still does, but with much more, get the correct word there, much more maturity. He knows what to do, when to do it. He doesn't try to offload every single ball. He doesn't, want to step every single guy he sees in front of him. He knows when to take contact now and those sort of things. So I think he will fit in most definitely. I still think he's not a fly-off. He can play fly-off, obviously. He's a good playmaker, but he's more of a 12 playmaker. You get your guys like I want to say Quade Cooper, but some of those guys, they can play 10 and 12, but they are better at 12 as opposed to the R10, where the opposite is true for some guys like Andre Pollard, for instance. So he would definitely fit into their mold. Their style of play is his style of play. They like to attack. He knows Jar quite well. He knows his defensive system. So I think in that regard, he would be a good fit for Leinster. And we spoke about sabbaticals now. Maybe it would not be too unwise of the Stormers to let him take a sabbatical to Leinster. But in the same breath, we're going to talk about this. What happens to Manie Libbok? And they only have Sasha on the books, but we'll get to that conversation later on as well.
Now, going to Leinster for a sabbatical doesn't really make sense because they still play. They also play in the URC. They also play in the European Cup. They actually play in the Champions Cup. So they would have had just as many games to play. I think a sabbatical is more towards, maybe going to play in a country like Japan, earn a lot of money for a short period of time, take a bit of a break. It's not as physical, and the big money, like we said, and then come back after a shorter season than normal. So let's talk about Manie Libbok. What's the rumors around Manie going to Japan as for a sabbatical? The Stormers lying to go for sabbatical. Is there any truth to that?
I think there's maybe some truth into it. I think also he maybe wants to explore different environment, make a bit of money as well. I mean, he's not getting any younger. He's been with the Stormers now since 2020, 2021. And the thing is, like a lot of these guys, they hit the ceiling and then they stagnate. I think Manie might have stagnated a bit. He's had a first few good seasons with the Stormers, obviously leading them to a title, another final as well. Made his Springbok debut, won a World Cup. But also you need sometimes as a player that different environment where you can not necessarily grow as a player, but maybe more as a person, get out of your comfort zone a bit, learn a new language, experience a different culture. I mean, how many times have you seen guys go overseas and they come back just better? Not because that limited skill set or anything, but they just got a refreshing view. And then they come back after 6 months. They've missed the team back home. Let's say with Mr. Stormers, he's back into the system again. He can then bring his A game again like he used to. Because, I mean, I think it's natural of human beings to, if you're too long in the same environment, you do get bored subconsciously. And if you experience something else for a short period of time, you enjoy it, you make a bit of moolah, you come back to your union, you are refreshed. And we've seen it with a lot of guys before. So it might not be the worst idea for him to go overseas for a couple of months.
Forget about the sabbatical for a moment. Manie's future at the Stormers with Sasha being there, Sasha now being the preferred backup fly-off to Andre Pollard, or maybe even the preferred fly-off, you never know. Where's Manie fit into the Stormers plan, Dobbins' plan? He's got such a potent backline. He's got Manie there, he's got Sasha there, he's got Damian there, he's Warwick Galant, he's got the two wings, Zas and Artsenberg. Such a potent backline, but is there space for all of them? And do you think Manie still has a place to go to at the Stormers at fly-off, which is his preferred position?
It's a catch-22 for Manie now. Like I mentioned, he probably hit the ceiling now at the Stormers. But we spoke about this a lot, of South African teams needing depth to play in two competitions. This is what you want. You want a Sasha and a Manie and a Damian and a Yuri. I mean, they've got 4 fly-offs on their books, well, 3 fly-offs and a utility back for that matter. But you want those guys to be there. So you can say, for instance, okay, the season starts, we're going to play 4 matches at home. We're going to go on a 3-week tour or 4-week tour overseas. So let's say, Manie, you start the URC. Sasha, you can play off the bench, or you can be rested, or Yuri, you can be on the bench. And then you go overseas, you take Sasha with, and you take another backup fly-off with. And then you play those guys there, and you balance your squad to keep them fresh. Hopefully you get the results that side. My team is not known for touring very well. But you get the results that side, you come back home, and then you rotate again. I think it was in 2012, 2013, the Chiefs of New Zealand. That 2013 season, they probably made 6-7 changes per week, and they just kept on winning. They kept the guys fresh. And I think the problem with us South African teams is I understand that continuity is important, but we tend to play these guys into the ground for 6, 7, 8 weeks, and then you go into a Champions Cup, and then you want to send second stringers. And you've got enough guys in your system with enough depth, well, most of the time, in most positions, and those guys don't get a look in. I mean, look at JJ Kotze. First URC, it was only him and Andre Goventer, right? And Skara into being him. Skara didn't get a lot of game time. Andre was the starter, JJ was the backup. All of a sudden, Joseph Weber comes in. JJ doesn't see a start anymore. He probably had like 5 games this whole season. Joseph is the starter, Andre plays off the bench. Skara's gone to the Sharks on loan. So you see what I'm getting at. So why not use your depth to the best of your ability? You make sure your guys are fresh. You limit injuries. And when you go to a secondary competition like the Champions Cup or the Challenge Cup, you know that you have guys that are fresh enough, that are match fit, but they are also good enough to play there because they have been in the system and they have been playing for the team for some time, throughout the season. So it's all a balancing act. And I think that South African teams in general, they just don't seem to get it right. I mean, look at the Sharks. You go and play a Challenge Cup quarterfinal or round of 16, you are the defending champion. Then you send a bunch of rookies through because you want to focus on one competition. I mean, the Sharks, look at their depth. Why? Why do you even go that route? You sign all these Springboks and top players, and you still went on to keep your top players here and send basically like Leinster would do an academy team to Europe to defend the title. It makes no sense.
Yeah, you calling that a secondary competition is going to raise a few eyebrows. That's probably the best club rugby competition in the world. And the Stormers are out of that competition, both the Challenge and the Champions Cup. So they've got a bit of an easier running towards the end of the season, trying to make the top 8. But a bit of a hiccup against Ulster, and of course that red card against Neerling for sure. It's what a disgrace. I mean, that to me should not, maybe have been a penalty, but still never even been a yellow card. Ended up being a 4-week suspension. I mean, that's a serious setback for John Dobson's plans to qualify for the top 8. And it's not exactly like the Stormers have a pantry full of tight-headed locks or even loose-head props for that matter to replace him. What are the Stormers doing to mitigate this suspension of Neerling for sure, to make sure that they actually can qualify for the URC top 8?
I think it was evident against the game against the Bulls in Cape Town. He was missed. I think he had a head clash with some other player as well, and had to sit out that match. And unfortunately, our scrums got totally dominated against you guys. So he's going to be missed, most definitely. I mean, regarding that red card, if I think back to that game, the referee initially said, listen, I saw what happened. He couldn't get any lower. And the team, I want to say forced, but he practically forced him to make it into a red card. That leaves a bit of a sour taste in the mouth. And then I think to protect the TMO now, they have to come out and say, okay, you're banned for this amount. As far as I know, the Stormers are allowed to appeal it. I'm surprised they haven't. I mean, 1 week would make a hell of a difference.
Yeah, of course.
But I mean, by all means, he's going to be missed. He's a captain. He's a very strong scrummager. He's a very good ball player as well. You don't get those kind of props these days a lot anymore, or anywhere in the world a lot. So, I mean, that's one thing. So, you now look at Saji Sunday or Brock Harris starting. I mean, Brock is 40 years old. He's going to retire at the end of the season regardless. Sarge is the up-and-coming guy, but he hasn't gotten a lot of starts, if any, for that matter. I think only on tour at the start of the season, he had a couple of starts. Third guy in line, I'm not too sure about. So they might have to go into that under-21 team and maybe get someone there to maybe make their debut. I know good old Sasha made his debut in a quarterfinal against Edinburgh off the bench, when what's his name, Ricky Pretorius got injured. So maybe there's an up-and-coming tight-head prop that's very promising and maybe gets an opportunity and makes a name for himself. But at this stage of the season, especially where the Stormers are at, it's definitely not ideal.
Those two names that you mentioned, aren't they mostly loose heads?
Yeah, look, I mean, we got Ollie. No, Brock can play both sides, but Lucius, we got Ollie, and we've got Stacey Tole, Blizo's still out. And of course, some tuna from the Sharks is coming only at the start of next season. So it's not too great there. Like I said, Brock can play both sides, obviously. So, I mean, he can go either way. But we only got Saji Sunday and Brock Harris, basically, if you think about it. Then you got Leon Lyons, but he's also a loose head at Greek Quiz. I'm surprised the Stormers haven't used him this season a lot. I don't think they've used him at all for that matter. I think they used him last season, but he's still an option. He's been doing well for them. I think we played a Champions Cup game against Clermont or something, and we had a couple of loose heads out. Lions came in and he just distracted everyone. So I'm surprised they haven't gotten him back, for the loose head position again. But in terms of tight heads, we are in trouble though.
Game between the Sharks and the Lions, the second one, just after the Lions beat the Sharks so comprehensively at Ellis Park, the follow-up game in Durban. And when they announced the team, there was Henry Immelman, signed for the Bulls, with big fanfare coming from Scotland and everything. And now suddenly he was playing for the Sharks. We never knew anything about it. And I actually asked Jake about it a bit later, a couple of days after the press conference, what is the story? And he said it's basically very simple. Henry wasn't getting much game time at the Bulls. The Sharks approached the Bulls for assistance on the fullback position because of Fassi and everybody else being injured. And the Bulls agreed to it because the Sharks would be paying Henry's salary for a little bit. So it takes a bit of pressure off the Bulls in terms of salary, and also gives Henry Immelman a bit of game time. So now the Stormers seem to be taking a leaf out of that book lately. We saw Scarra and Tubeni pitch up at the Sharks on loan. That Willie Engelbrecht's been sent to the Pumas, back to the Pumas for a bit, at least temporarily. And then a couple of players pitching up at Griquas and Boland and everything else. What's going on there?
I think it's a case of getting these guys game time. Like you mentioned now, rightly so. And yeah, there's a lot of the guys in the system. Like we only see the 23 on the field and maybe the guys you're familiar with that's not playing. But there's probably a whole nother squad for that matter. Good 25, 30 odd players that's in the system and they don't get game time. I'm not sure if you guys remember, Sibusiso Sangweni used to play for the Lions. He was also junior Bok. I met him at the Stormers launch last year, September. And before I knew it, he's playing for Bola now. Willie Engelbrecht, he's back at the Pumas, but all on loan. Scaras at the Sharks, as we know. So there's a few names we can think about. And I think it's more to get these guys game time. I'm not sure what the recall policy is. Should, let's say, we lose three flanks the next game, can Willie come back? Is he allowed to come back? How does that work? Same with Hook as well. Say Joseph and Andre Ego breaks down. Scara needs to come back. I'm not sure how that works, but I think it's to keep these guys fit. You save a bit of money, like you mentioned. And, I think if it does come down to that, you can maybe recall them to come back, if need be. But I don't see the need for guys to hold tackle backs and be dirt trackers. And you still have to pay their salaries just for being there. And they're not getting used on the field. So it's sort of a win-win. And I think it's a model we need to maybe adapt. I think back in the day, the Lions used to do it with the Pumas. They used to get the guys like Fab de Klerk and those guys to play for the Lions till they get permanent contracts. I think even back in the day, Barry Leroux with the Griquas, before we went to the Cheetahs, he was on the same model. Play for Griquas, Super Rugby, you play for the Cheetahs. But it's a way to go. You get your guys you get them loaned out. You don't pay their salaries. They keep fit. You get an option to get them back. And I think the good thing with the Stormers is they got a thing with the Griquas, some sort of agreement. So I think that's why a lot of those guys a few guys that I know that came down to the Stormers for 2 years, they signed contracts. They're all back at Griquas now. And because they weren't being used, nothing else, So I think maybe that's the way forward for all teams to do so. And I think it could be a win-win for everyone in that regard.
So Audrey Smith, lock for the Stormers being allowed to go play in Japan on a sabbatical as well. Is that a temporary or permanent thing? We saw Curtly Arendse getting a bit of a temporary sabbatical because he's going to go to Japan. He's going to come back. Is Audrey Smith going to come back himself, or why was he sent or allowed to go to Japan? I mean, Curtly Arendse is a Springbok. You might, want to let him go rather than lose him permanently, or let him go temporarily rather than lose him permanently. Why Audrey Smith? What are the plans for him, and why did the Stormers allow that to happen?
If you look back at our season, the only time Audrey played or he got regular starts was when Salman wasn't playing. So again, you got Ruben van Heerden. You've got all those guys in the mix. So he obviously fell out of favor. And I think it's just that, if he doesn't get game time, what's the point of having the guy in the squad? But also, again, Japan is not easy to say, listen, I'm going to recall this guy as opposed to a Pumas or a Griquas. You can just say, listen, Jimmy, or listen, if I need this guy back. If you go to Japan, he goes to Japan, and that's it. So I'm not too sure. I'm not sure if you know him, but Dylan de Leeuw, he played for Western Province Currie Cup in 2023, I think. And he was pretty good. I think he made his debut fresh out of the under-21s. And before I knew it, he's playing for Zebre. And when I inquired about it, they said he's on loan. And now he's not even playing for Zebre anymore. He's not in the team anymore. So I'm not sure what happened to him either. So a lot of those guys, they tend to lose their way, or they're being mismanaged, or they just maybe get injured. I don't know what the story is exactly, but why they let Audrey go, I'm not too sure. But I think it's because when Salman wasn't available, he was a good fit for them, or for us for that matter. But in the same breath, if you're going to have a guy there and he's going to eat up his salary, he might not play a game. And you got guys like Connor Evans that came back, and Ben Jason who can also play lock. I mean, those are promising guys. Connor Evans, he's 22 years old now, 23. I think a bit older, 24 maybe. You got Ben Jason, Springbok. He can play flank. He can play lock. So there's probably all those guys ahead of him, and maybe he had his time with the Stormers. He won the URC, and they don't see him much in their plans going forward anymore. I don't think it's going to stay a loan deal, to be honest. I think it might even be permanent going forward.
Yeah, when you mentioned Zebre now, I thought about Italian teams, and I thought about Benetton, and then I thought about Dewald Dievenage. And what's the story with Dewald Dievenage? I mean, there's 1 week he's playing, next week he pops up in the coaching box, and he's also not the youngest player on the field anymore. What's the story with Dewald? What's the plan with him going forward?
Ah, never say die, dear be say. You know what was funny? I think it was last year with the Curry Cup, we played against the Cheetahs, and I was working on that game. So I got to the stadium, and they always give you these team sheets that sign off. You get the team in the week, and then they give you the team, the official team that's going to run out. So I'm going through the list, and I'm like, okay, 15, 14, 13, this guy. And I get to number 9, and I'm like, what did I see, right? Dewald Duvenage. So I went to the Stormers media manager, Michael. You know Michael. And I asked Michael, listen, what's this now? He's like, no, Asad Moors and Imad Khan, they both broke down during the week. So Dewald was in Cape Town, and he's on a pay-as-you-play contract, or pay-as-you-play deal for that matter. I'm like, okay, cool. Maybe it's a once-off. And he plays another game in the Curry Cup again. And before I knew it, the guy's back in a Stormer jersey. And I'm like, listen, you're pushing 40 as well. Like, why are you there? So, I mean, there are guys that's coming up and coming. Like I said, Asad Moors and Dewald Duvenage and Imad Khan. There is guys in the system. I think one of them, I think it's Asad. They've actually put him on a conditioning program to be physically enough or physically strong for URC. I think he's a bit on the skinny side. So he's in a bit of a program now as we speak. But I mean, Stormers should really think of not playing these guys until they're in the retirement home. I mean, look at Brock, look at Theobald. I mean, no disrespect to Kobus Reiner. I'm very excited that he's coming, but he's 36 when he gets here. So he's going to play a mentoring role for those two guys I just mentioned now. And I think that's why they're probably comfortable to let Herschel and Paul go, which I never saw Paul going to the Bulls. He's always been out in our province, man. At least from what I've saw through the years. But, pro sport's a funny thing. And if you don't want you anymore, then you go somewhere else, I guess.
I don't think it's like the Stormers didn't want him anymore. I just think that the Bulls maybe wanted him a bit more. I'm actually quite excited about all of it coming to the Bulls. I can see a good future, a big future for him. Yeah, I can see where he fits into Jake's plans here. But Dewald, I think, what maybe probably going to be moving towards the coaching side a bit more. The Province guys like to bring in older players, Dion Fourie, Brock Harris, like you mentioned, as a bit of a mentor, and then moving into coaching.
No, it's been a thing with the Stormers. So Brock Harris, I think you know the story, obviously, but he came back as a mentor, and the same with Dion Fourie, and it ended up, being more players than mentors, maybe both roles. But Brock has been coaching the under-21s. I think he's been part of the Curry Cup last season as part of the coaches. So that's one good thing I like about the Stormers. You got all these ex-players that's transitioning from player to player coach and then into coaching. Remember, Dewald Duvenage used to be a player coach in his last season for Benetton. I'm not sure if you know that.
Yeah, true.
So I think that experience in itself, he probably grew quite a bit there, and now came back home again. You stay in the game, you still play a bit, and then when you officially retire, which I think might be next season for Dewald, hopefully, when you officially retire, you take over the reins as a coach, and you coach a good 21, 22-year-old scrum up coming up. You got a nice Kobus Reiner to work with, and you can share ideas with you and vice versa. So I think that's one good thing the Stormers actually got right, is get these old players to stay in the system and play a mentoring role and coaching role. And I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if, say, this year's Curry Cup, you might see Brock Harris as a head coach or something, because I think they're moving towards that pattern now as well.
That's interesting. I was wondering whether Dobbo was going to coach the Curry Cup again. We'd like to see what happens there. I think he's got too much on his shoulders. I still maintain that he needs to become director of rugby and get some other coaches in beneath him. But in some other news, next week is a local derby in the final of the Varsity Cup. Maties taking on Ikeys again in Stellenbosch. You're probably going to go watch that game.
I bought my ticket as soon as they were available. I'm very excited. Obviously, all Cape derby, so regardless, that rope is going back to the Western Cape. Happy days. But I'm looking forward to it. I don't think the Maties had their best game, whereas UCT, they were on fire there at Alta Village. Yeah, they were quite on fire there. Started off strong with a 14-point lead, and Tuks did well to fight back, obviously. But I mean, I don't know what it is about the UCT. Like, they are just that good at traveling away from home in knockout games. Historically, it's always been a thing for them. They always win their away semi or their away final. And it's not the first time, So, I mean, I would not discard them in this final. But I think Maties will most likely come out on top. I've been wrong before in that regard, but I got a very good feeling about this one.
I actually attended that league game between Maties and Ikeys earlier in the season when they were playing at in Stellenbosch as well. And I was quite impressed with Ikeys. I mean, Maties was lucky to win that game, make no mistake. I mean, they had that injury to Ngubeni, their scrum half. Yes, brilliant player. But I mean, they were quite lucky to pull that one through right at the end. They scored another try that managed, to win them the game. But if I had to choose, I would say for this game, I'm going to go for Ikeys. You don't travel to Pretoria, beat Tikkies at home, and then fall flat in the final. Well, you shouldn't. So yeah, I'm going to go for Ikeys. I think Robbie Fleck is a fantastic coach. Johan Tromalen also spoke about it yesterday from a reporter when we had a chat to him about it. So yeah, I'm supporting Ikeys.
Yeah, but it's a tough feat to go to Pretoria and beat Tuks there. It's really, really a tough ask. So you're quite right there. But yeah, look, I think the one player you mentioned now they missed is Ezekiel Ngubeni. He's been such a star for Maties, and unfortunately, in that same game, you were there as well. He actually happened in front of me. He got tackled, and I think he hit his head against the ground. So yeah, it was quite a terrible injury. But I saw in your video yesterday with Yuan, apparently he got his ankle injured as well. I'm not sure what the prognosis is. It's actually quite sad. He's not going to be involved in a final. But, there's guys, like they mentioned now, Mikael Volmoer, who's quite a decent scrum half. I don't think he's as good as Ezekiel. And I think the next guy in line is like a 19-year-old. But they've all shown that they can play on the bigger stage. I think the good thing about these guys is they are not the Varsity Cup teams of the Eno van der Merwe and Duncan Saal and Chris Smith and those big name players and Chris Massane and Neerton Pushe, they were guys that you knew they were the unions, they were big name players. These are just like the old Varsity Cup days where there's probably one or two guys contracted to a union like Joel Lirotlela, those sort of guys, but they're all not that well known. It's like the old Varsity Cup days where it's just students playing rugby and having fun. So I don't think the pressure will get to them too much, to be honest. If you think back to a Frans Steyn in the 2007 World Cup final, stepped up, took a kick, and just ran back. Those guys don't feel pressure as much. But I think the home field advantage, I mean, you've been to that UCT game. MV, I can tell you the vibe you saw that day, apart from the music, the beating music. If that stadium is packed and full of maroon, it's probably one of the most intimidating places for an opposition team to play. And I can say that because I've been part of that crowd, and it's freaking insane, to be honest. It's something else. You have to be there to experience it. Like no television broadcast can justify the vibe in that place when it's packed and there's 16,000 Maties against you on that day. It's a very tough place to play, especially in the final.
Yeah, that music that day, there was never even a 1 second rest for the wicket. Hip hop in my ears all the time. I've got a thing about being in my bonnet about too much music. But anyway, it's a varsity game. It's a student game. I understand it's a different crowd. That day was also actually quite a full stadium. It wasn't maybe a sellout, but a lot of people there, and I like the atmosphere. And yeah, I look forward to a lot of pressure on Maties. The 150th anniversary, a home crowd. They need to win, so we'll see what happens. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks, Angus. I enjoyed that, man. It was a pleasure. Give my regards to Jan, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Always a pleasure, MB. Thanks for having me. And yeah, just before I knock off, I'm sure you enjoyed that view from the media box. It's a beautiful sunset, eh?
Yeah, it was my first ever Varsity Cup game, and I must be honest, probably one of the most beautiful stadiums that I ever watched a game at. It was sensational. I sent a picture to my friend Hugh Griffin in England, and he couldn't believe the scenery of Pretoria. So anyway, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a good game. Thanks, Angus.
It's the Lekker Rugby Inside Story Series.